Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Pearson English webinar. Thank you for joining us today. Please remember this session is recorded, and the recording will be made available via our YouTube channel after the event. Also, every participant will receive a certificate of attendance. Please submit any questions you have in the chat box, and we will answer these at the end of the session. My pleasure to hand over to Michael. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you very much, Charlie, and good evening or good afternoon to all the teachers, depending on where you're calling in from. Okay, just a housekeeping reminder just before we begin that you're getting the recording and a certificate and an exciting virtual goodie bag within a couple of weeks of this webinar finishing. Okay, so my name is Michael Brandt, and I'm a teacher trainer for Pearson. It's a pleasure to be talking to you tonight. I've just got a few pictures of what I do here. So on the top left, you can see me teacher training or giving a talk at a conference, something which I'm not doing very much at the moment or at all, in fact, at least not face-to-face because of this atypical year that we're living through, let's put it that way. I do lots of webinar sessions. I'm doing lots of online training like today. I'm also a teacher on the Live Classes project. And the Live Classes project is it's a series of lessons which we teach to students all around the world at the same time, and we connecting them up, bringing countries and cultures together, and having them learn English and learn about one another. And it's a lot of fun, and I think the students really like it. It won an award a couple of weeks ago, an Elton Award. And if you think it's something that you might be interested in for your students and you'd like to hear more, please go to english.com/liveclasses to check it out. Okay, so perhaps I'll see you again in one of those. All right, good. Okay, so on to the presentation for today. So I've said already that I do some online teaching. My career as a teacher, I did mainly secondary teaching. I dabbled in primary and adults. And I did lots of preparation for exams from, let's say, preliminary B1 level to up to proficiency C2 and everything in between. Okay, so I'm dovetailing those two things in the session today. Okay. Okay, so English exams, keys to success in certification or high stakes exams, as you might call them. So an English exam should be about knowing English, of course, and knowing how to use English in real life situations. Depending on the exam that your students are sitting, you'll also need greater or fewer exam skills and strategies for the questions. So when we teach our students exam classes, we'll need to take some time, dedicate some time to this, and indeed giving them lots of practice in the appropriate format. Okay, I'm sure you know that. It's not everything though, is it? As you can see on this news flash here, there are other things that are required. So having a good level of English perhaps may seem obvious, but we need to bear it in mind that if we dedicate too much time to say strategies and protocols for the exam, how much language, how much grammar and vocabulary we're actually teaching them. We want them to be motivated and engaged. That way they'll learn more, of course. There's studies show there's a link between emotions and learning. We want them to develop useful global skills. So our teens of today, we're thinking of skills that are useful for them now and that are going to be useful for their futures as well. Can we develop those skills in our classes? I'm talking things like empathy, critical thinking, resilience, research, presentation skills, digital presentation skills. And then we're going to try and do all of this in online lessons. Okay, so we're giving ourselves, quite a tall order, trying to mix all of these different factors together. Okay, good. I've divided this talk then into 4 parts. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the basics in online classes. So let's say technical aspects, interactional aspects first of all. Then in my sections 2 and 3, I'm going to look at exam questions. I can't do all parts of every exam today, but I'm going to be looking at speaking and writing in particular. Then I'm going to look about ways to give students exam practice at home as well. Okay, so those are my aims, if you like. Okay, Right, okay, so let's have a look. Screen share, mic, vid, chat. So these are 4 things you're going to be using in your classes. You're going to be doing a fair bit of sharing your screen like I am today. You're going to need microphones, and your students will too, so you can talk to one another. Also videos so you can see one another, and the chat box, which is incredibly useful. Sadly, today we've only got the first and the fourth of those 4 things. I can't hear you, and I can't see you, and I wish I could, but perhaps another day. Let's go through them one at a time. So screen sharing, we can share our screen, we can share our computer sound for listening activity, to play a video. What sort of things might we share? We might share the front of class presentation tool. If our course material comes from one of those, we can continue with our course in online classes, sharing the front of class presentation tool as we do in a face-to-face class. We can share videos. We can share PowerPoint presentations, as I am now. This, the PowerPoint presentation in the middle here is a grammar presentation. We can do things like Kahoots, getting our students, they'll need another device, a phone, or to do quizzes online. We can share a whiteboard. So tools like Zoom have a whiteboard, which we can use as a board in our normal class, as we do in our ordinary classes, perhaps writing in our goals, new vocabulary, mistakes. And we can also use our whiteboard collaboratively. So again, I'm going to reference Zoom because it's the tool I most use. You can have students annotating the whiteboard, and it's another way to keep them active and engaged in online lessons. This is an example you can see on the screen here I did with some students. They just had to draw an animal, and then they had to take turns to guess what the other animals were, and the people who drew them had to confirm or deny that. Okay, so there's lots of things you can be sharing on your screen. On the point of screen share, I would say you only share your screen if you need to. So the alternative to screen share is just everybody seeing each other. And there's a lot to be said for that. As I said, I can't see you today, and I wish I could, but you've got the whole class together with their cameras on, and you can, read each other's facial gestures and communicate that way. So if you don't have, if they have the information in front of them, and then you don't need to also put it on the screen, and you can just have the cameras on. I would just bear that in mind. Okay. The chat box. So many things, of course, you can do with the chat box. So many different ways you can use it. We'll just do an example with all of you guys. Okay. So I'd like you to think of a delicious English food, a delicious English food. Don't write in the chat box. Don't write anything. Think of it. Think of a delicious English dish. Okay. Okay. I could get you to put your thumbs up if you've thought of one. That'd be another way of checking you've done it, but I'm not going to for now, just for time, but you might in your lessons. Now I'd like you to write it in the chat box, but don't send yet. Write this delicious dish in the chat box. Don't send it yet. And now I'd like you to click send, please. Can you send? Fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips, ice cream, chips, pancakes, fish and chips, cheesy chips. Lovely. Excellent choice there, Roy. Trifle pudding, anything vegan, omelette, cheese, fish and chips, fish and chips, fish and chips. I mean, fish and chips is a delicacy, to be fair, so I can understand that. Deep fried fish and chips. What more could you want? Casserole. Okay. Lots of ideas here. In the sort of the way I set that up, an alternative would have been to say, does anyone have any ideas for nice English foods? And some of you might have done it, some of you might have not bothered to do it. I tried to sort of oblige you all to do it by this. Everybody think of one. Everybody get one in their mind, and I could say hands up if you've got one. Put it in the chat box, but don't send. And it's a way of trying to get everyone to do it, and also that it's not people just copying what others have written in the chat box. They all have actually thought of something on their own. This idea of giving students thinking time. Okay. So you can use the chat box for brainstorming, for typing, for students typing in the answers. You can use the chat box for students repeating your instructions, because in online classes sometimes well, there's more distance and it's harder to know whether they've understood. So you can give you instructions and say, right, I want you to put the instructions in the chat box, a way of checking that they've understood the task. I can explain the task and then put the task in the chat box so the students have a written record of it. Students could be speaking and I can be putting corrections in the chat box. As a way of giving kind of delayed feedback, you know, not interrupting them. I can be pasting links in the chat box to other sites that were going on in the lesson. I can provide the chat box to students after the lesson. And there's tools like Zoom let you download them. And the students give them some kind of treasure hunt task or to write down 10 new words that they've learned, okay? Because there's so much language in there, you know, from an hour's lesson or 45 minutes lesson. I can send messages to individual students as well as the whole class. So, and then you can play with this with your activities. I might say, for example, I want everybody in my class to send me individually their dream holiday destination, and they start coming in, but only I can see them. And then I say, right, Mauritius. So who do you think wants to go to Mauritius? And the students start guessing who sent me that holiday destination, for example. Could be anything. But you can play with the private messaging. You can also use private messaging to give feedback individually, of course, if you don't want to give it in front of the whole class, okay? And the chat box is a place that everyone can speak at once, all right? You don't really want everyone speaking at once if you think in a lesson, a face-to-face lesson, that's kind of things we want to avoid. But, you know, just loads of language going in at once is very good. Okay, so those are just a few ideas about screen sharing and chat boxes and things like that. I'm just going to do sort of an example of screen sharing, the front of class presentation tool and the sort of things that I do. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. If you just give me a second. Okay, so you should be able to see Zoom, but okay, so what I'm gonna go into is, as I say, a front of class presentation tool, which hopefully your course material has. It's a useful focal point for the lesson and allows the students to, you know, to see the activities and see what they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to click on Teach here. Now, so this is my lesson. It's a vocabulary lesson on personality adjectives. I might have started my lesson just by doing the activity I just did with you. So, you know, I'll say, well, lazy is a personality adjective, and it means when you don't like working much and you don't have much energy. Can you think of one? And then do this thing in the chat box of get it in your mind, you know, as I tried to sort of model. Okay, then I sort of go on to the lesson. I might give my students a few minutes to try the first activity. I like in my classes trying to kind of keep a sort of your structure and keep a bit of healthy pressure on the students. So I like to give them, you know, time, set time to do the activities. I'd say 3 minutes to do that activity, off you go, and you can tell me in the chat box when you've finished. And then if if a student says that they've finished before 3 minutes, of course, give them some simple follow-up, fast finisher task, maybe that they, you know, choose the ones which are relevant to them or which describe them, and the ones which don't, or describe somebody they know using one of the words, or tell me any other words they know, for example. Okay. Yeah, so there's a timer. In terms of actually correcting the activity, so let's say going over the activities, it might be that I nominate a student to do question number 1, to read out the definition and give the word, and then get them to nominate a student to do number 2, then that student nominates for number 3, etc., going on all the way through. It could be that I ask students to shout out their name if they know the answer to the question. Better than shouting out the answer, of course. If you've got 20 people shouting out an answer in an online class, you know where it's coming from, so it needs to be your name. So you hear a name and they say, yes, Anna, and then Anna gives the answer. Okay. Other ways of going over the answers, make it competitive. Let's get my scores out. So, for example, I might say, those students with a first name that begins with A to L is team A. Those with his first name beginning with M to Z is team B. Write your answer in the chat box as fast as you can. And I say, right, number 2. And then Anna writes in the chat box, lazy. And I say, yeah, well done, Anna. So that's your name begins with an A. That's a point for team A. Okay, so you can make this, competitive as well. Not saying the whole lesson needs to be competitive, but it's a nice way of keeping students on their toes and bring a bit of energy to the lesson now and then. Of course, there's a lot to be said for collaboration as well, and we'll talk about collaboration in a little while. Okay. Other things you can do here, like when students are giving answers, you can have the other students, for example, putting their thumbs up or their thumbs down to say whether they agree or disagree with the answer. And if they disagree, you can call on them to say what they think. And they can do that with a real thumbs up and thumbs down, or like the Zoom tool for putting your thumbs up, for example. Okay. Yeah, so good. So I'm just going to go back to my presentation. Going to go back to the webinar. There we go. I'm back to the presentation. So there's just an example of something you might do in an online lesson, sharing your screen and sharing your actual course material and carrying on with the activities, as you may in an ordinary class, but with some sorts of different dynamics. As well as sharing front of class presentation tools, you might share a PowerPoint like we're doing today. Not death by PowerPoint, hopefully, not too much PowerPoint, and we can get the students sort of interacting as well, not just a presentation. So imagine PowerPoints are nice for grammar presentations. The grammar Gold Experience comes with PowerPoint grammar presentations. So here you can see a student's there's a paragraph written with the present simple and present continuous to get a student to actually read this out, and then get them to put in the chat box or to shout their name, as we said before, for a permanent state, for a temporary state. Okay, and then we can check with our animations on our PowerPoint. Okay, before moving on, perhaps give the students a chance to give me a permanent state, what they're doing right now. A personal example of the different uses of the tenses. Okay, and then continue my explanation with timelines and looking at the form. So another thing you might share with your screen share is the PowerPoint presentation, for example, on a grammar point. Okay. So that was just the first section, if you like, talking about as we said, screen sharing, mics, sort of interaction patterns. I now want to move on to the second section, which is speaking. Okay. Okay. So breakout rooms. Breakout rooms, if you have them, they're very useful for pair work and for group work. And platforms like Zoom, WebEx, Big Blue Button, and others have them. I've used breakout rooms extensively in my live classes, and they are by far the favorite part of the class. When I get a school from, Serbia, and a school from Greece, and a school from Gaza, and a school from Spain, in a room together, and they start getting to know one another. It's great to watch, and they do bring a lot to the language classroom. Okay, and I do the power of collaborative work and group work. You can draw on that in a breakout room. I'm just gonna talk about breakout rooms before going on to exam tasks in breakout rooms. So on the screen here, I've just got a few sort of tips, if you like. So the first tip is that you're sending your students off in breakout rooms, and they really do need to be crystal clear on what they're doing, even more than in group work in a classroom, I reckon. So that can involve giving instructions, checking that you understand, you writing in the chat box what you're supposed to be doing in there, me modeling, let's say, the speaking activity with one of you, and only then sending you into your rooms. The second point being that we need to be clear on what you're going to do when you come back. So is it you're going to say what you're going to have made notes on what your partner said and you're going to share that with us? Are you going to have assessed what your partner said and you share that with us? What do you need to show at the end? Yeah. The teacher can go in and out of rooms to help. The teacher might stay in one room with students who need more help because they have a lower level of English or a lower level in other relevant skills. Or the teacher can actually monitor from afar. And I'm going to look at that in the next slide. Okay. One feature I find really useful in these breakout rooms is the broadcast message function. So the ability to send a message to all of these rooms at the same time. And I like to do that to keep the students on task. So imagine they've got to do a task which is broken down into smaller tasks. Yeah, like imagine they're preparing a presentation or a project and they have to do some research and a plan or whatever. So you might have already just said how long they should be spending on each part. So you say, right, get on with task one. Okay, you've got 5 minutes. Broadcast to all rooms. You've got 1 minute left in task one. Okay, guys, you should be finishing task one and moving on to task two. You've got 1 minute left in task two. So you're trying to, keep them up to speed with, where they're supposed to be in those activities, rather than sort of, off you go and I'll see you in half an hour and we'll see what you've done. Yeah. No, it's not a special app. It's part of Zoom. Somebody's asking about them. Even the free version has breakout rooms. Okay. Yeah, other things I wanted to mention on this screen is that the students can share their screen inside a breakout room. So if there's something they all need to be able to see, one of the students can share it. Students have the ask for help function if they want to alert your attention, and you get an alert pops up on your screen. And finally, I want to share with you this idea of monitoring from afar. So here I've got like a Google Doc. Okay, I'm just going to briefly, because somebody said that this morning, so we use Teams in Croatia, no breakout rooms. Yeah, I saw there is a way on Teams to open up different meetings. It's a bit more convoluted than in Zoom, and you have to have done it before the meeting. It's not as on the spot, but it can be done with prior preparation, and there's YouTube tutorials on how to do that. I'm not going to play one right now, but there are ways around it, I understand. Back to today's presentation. What I'm talking about here is students in a breakout room. They were doing a project on. They were preparing a presentation on an unusual building, and so they had to prepare their presentation on a Google Doc. So they were in different rooms, writing in the name of the building, researching where it was, when it was made, all these details, and they had to be putting them in the doc. And of course, if I can see the document, I can see all of the groups editing it in real time. So I'm just there out of the room looking at the document. And if I see that one of the groups hasn't really done much, or is behind the others, I'll go in and help or check. But it's a way of seeing what's going on. And also the students can see what the other groups are doing as well. So they can see if they need to kind of speed up a little bit, or they might even get ideas from other groups. That's fine as well. Okay. But they really do open out a lot of possibilities. Okay. But let's talk about exams. Let's consider practicing a speaking exercise in breakout rooms. So this is the collaborative task from the B2 first exam. Many of you may recognize it if you prepare for that exam. I've taken this experience from this example from Gold Experience. I'll just let you have a look at the task. Okay. Now I'm going to let you to read the exam tip and the little box. I'll just give you a second to read that. So It's about evaluating different options, this task, and coming to a conclusion. And the students need the language to do this. Here you can see the useful language is in the 2 boxes. Moving on. They also need lots of interactive language too. So sometimes where students fall down on this activity is that they don't, in the exam, that they don't, it's not interactive enough. So they just take turns to talk about the different options rather than actually reacting to what one another is saying. And say, you know, one of the students says, well, I think this one's a good idea. And what do you think? And the student says, I think it's a good idea as well. I agree with you. And I'd add this. What do you think of the other one? I don't think this would be a very good idea. And the student says, I agree with you, that wouldn't be a very good idea for this reason. Can you think of any other reasons? Yes, it wouldn't be a good idea for this. Let's look at the third one. So it's sort of, it's meant to be a back and forth rather than I talk about the first option, you talk about the second, third, etc. So you want to give them language and exemplify it in an example, and then that they use this language to interact. So look at the big green box. I wonder if anyone's got, if you prepared these kind of questions, you probably know this language without me giving you the options. What do you think goes in the first gap? What do you think goes in number 1? The one that before this one. Any ideas? How does this conversation start? Yeah, what about this one? That could fit in, couldn't it? Anything else? Remember, it's at the start. It's the first one. How about this one? Yeah, it's actually, shall we start with this one? Though I made that, what do you think about this one? I didn't actually, you know, give you the options. So things like, what do you think? How about, don't you agree? Okay, so this is sort of language that they need to be using to interact. Okay. So one way of trying to have them use these phrases to be more interactive, ensure interaction, is a kind of forced output activity. So in a classroom, this basically means that the language that you want your students to use is on little cards. They're there speaking, and they pick up a card when they use the phrase that's written on it. Yeah. So the one that says, in my opinion, this would be the best option for the holiday. Don't you agree? You know, and picks up the other one, and the other student says, I disagree with you on that. I don't think that would be the best option for this reason. You know, so in class, they're sort of picking them up to use them, and you can see who picked up the most. In online lessons, I've got them on a Jamboard here, which is an easy to use Google tool. And like all the rest of these sorts of Google tools, it's collaborative. So if you share a link to a Jamboard with someone, they can edit it. So here I've had my students categorize the phrases by moving them around the board. So I say, right, they're all mixed up. You put them into categories and you decide what the categories are. You know, so let's have a look. The categories are beginning, asking for opinions, disagreeing, agreeing, things like that. Okay. So the first thing is they categorize them. Yeah, Jamboard is great. It's a very useful tool. Then you can have one of the students in there actually sharing the screen and controlling the Jamboard, and he gets a little pen, and the other two do the speaking task. And you've got the one with a pen is marking each of the phrases as the students use it. So let's say marking on the left for one student and on the right for another student, or circling a phrase that one student used, or putting a triangle around a phrase that another student uses. Okay, and then, you know, seeing, and once it's got a circle around it, you got to use a different one. So it builds in variety. Okay, so this kind of picking up thing can be reproduced in an online class with a tool like this. Okay. Now you can share then this Jamboard with people just by providing a link. You can also make a copy. So imagine you were going to have 6 groups of students and they all had one of these to work on. You could just do quick copies of your Jamboards. But let's step back a minute. We're the teacher. Why should we be doing all the work? Let's get the students working. There's no reason why they can't do this. So they're in a breakout room with a list of phrases, and their task is to open a Jamboard and put the phrases on the Jamboard and categorize them. You quickly show them how the Jamboard works first, but this is something a student could do. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I must have, yeah. So must have read your mind there. Yeah. So there you go. The actual, yeah, in a breakout room. But if you get them to make it, they need to be shown. Okay. Moving on to different speaking tasks. So, okay, someone says I'm doing a good webinar. Thank you. That's given me, Philip, you've given me some sort of energy there to kind of carry on, you know, so thanks for that. So this is another part of the first exam, isn't it? So it's the interview part. When they're interviewed, they're asked basic questions like you can see in this yellow box here. Now you could get them practicing this in breakout rooms, of course, just like the last one. You can also get them practicing this on their own. Okay, I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So this is a Padlet. Padlet is fairly well trodden ground, I would say. Most people know about it, I think, or many, and have used it. If anyone hasn't, it's just an online space that you can give somebody the URL to, and it means that they can write on this space or this wall, write comments, upload pictures, share links, upload videos. So it's a good collaborative tool with lots of uses. If you know, there are blogs about 100 ways to use a Padlet, you know. So one thing I've had my students doing is recording themselves on a Padlet. I don't know if anyone's done that, had their students record an audio on the Padlet. Students recording themselves has lots of advantages. So they might make more of an effort if they know they're going to be listened to. It's a way of seeing progress as well. So if you have a recording over time, you can see how you progress. It's easy to see that in writing, isn't it? If you look something you wrote 2 years ago and you've learned for 2 years since then, your new writing's going to be a lot better. But speaking is sort of, you know, disappears into the air. So if you've got recordings of it, you can notice progress. Lots of reasons to record. So if you're on Padlet, you click the pink button to write something, and then you click on the 3 dots of the options. And then you've got lots of different things you can do. And one of them is voice, and that allows you to record your voice. Okay. So if I was doing this with my students, I'd be on Padlet demonstrating it. I'm not going to demonstrate absolutely everything today, just because, just for time purposes, really. So here are all some of my students, and they've recorded themselves. Okay. But one thing is them recording their voices. The next thing is feedback. So you can configure Padlet to allow for feedback. So the homework is to answer the 3 of the interview questions, let's say, and give another student feedback. That's the homework, and it's the feedback's based on criteria that you've agreed with them. So it could be checking that the student has given an extra piece of information, writing down any interesting language or any corrections, whatever the criteria is. Because Padlet, if you look on the left sort of image, has an option to allow comments, which means that students can comment on the other posts. Okay. How can you organize this? So you say, right, so everyone does a recording, and then you give everybody feedback, or you choose one person to give feedback, or 2. But then what happens if everybody chooses their best friend to give feedback to, and some people don't get any? So a very simple way of doing this is to assign all of the students a number. Let's say you've got 10 students from 1 to 10. On the Padlet, they write their number and they record their answers, and then they give feedback to the person on the right of them. So number 1 gives feedback to number 5. Number 2 gives feedback to number 10. So you give feedback to the number that the teachers assigned you, and a nice way of one of the things I like about this approach is it's a way of again of obliging all the students to do the task, because if there's one student without feedback, then that really stands out, and you say, oh, everyone got some feedback, oh, except Neil didn't get any feedback. I've been supposed to give Neil some feedback, or what happened there? And then you say, oh, hope next time they realize the responsibility they have to actually, they're all individual responsibility to complete the whole task, which is everyone does it and everyone gets feedback. So I like organizing in that way. Okay. I'm going to move on just to another speaking task. All right. So one other activity I've used in online lessons is the disappearing PowerPoint slide. And so this is to reveal a picture, to get students practicing the language of speculating. It seems that in the first photo they're doing this, and it looks like in the second they're doing this. Looks like in the first one he's doing this, but it looks as though in the second one he's speculating while comparing the photos. It's not, the task isn't, this exam task, the two pictures task is not only about speculating, it's about comparing, but speculating is part of it. Now you're going to do some speculating, please, teachers. So just have a quick look at this language for speculating, because I would like you to use this language. When you write something in the chat box, I'd like it to start with one of these phrases, okay? You're going to answer this question. Comparing the photos, why do you think the people are using technology in these situations? So why do you think these people are using technology? I want you to speculate, but I'm going to reveal the photos bit by bit. Okay, so get speculating. Oh, there's a useful language. Okay, let's go. Why do you think they're using technology in these photos? I'm going to wait until I've got an answer before I move on. Maybe this person's doing sports. Yeah, remember, language of speculating, ladies and gents. Perhaps the lady's doing sport at home. Okay. It seems the girl is working out. They might want to improve their lessons. Let's move on. They could be trying to find their way. That's a nice one. Looks like they're playing. Looks like they're reading. Yeah, he's probably playing the drums. Yeah, it's very good. You can see his hand. It's a good one, that. Looks as though they're playing a tennis match. I guess they're doing research. Some great ideas here. Loads of speculating and using the key phrases really, really well as well. Somebody's asking me what program I'm using. I'll say that in a minute. Looks like they're studying. They must be playing games. It looks as though they might be playing. They might be checking their health. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna speed up a bit now because I imagine they're having fun. Yeah, they seem to be enjoying themselves. They certainly do. It seems they're working out. Imagine they're getting a selfie. Yeah, it could be. You saw a hand sticking out. Okay, I think you can see most of it now. Okay, I'm just gonna pop to the end of the activity because I think you've got the gist of it. Okay. People are giving me new phrases saying the chances are. Okay, so let's just go back. All that was a PowerPoint slide with pictures and with shapes and animations to the shapes disappear. In case that PowerPoint slide, right, Leila, where can we get activities like this? That's just what I'm about to say. On this web address is a Dropbox, and if you go to this Dropbox, you can download the PowerPoint slide that I just shared with you. And obviously it's editable. So the animations are already on there. So the disappearing squares, all you need to do is to move hexagons. Sorry, I don't know my shapes. Just to move one of the hexagons, and you delete the picture behind it, and then you paste in whatever picture you want to use. You'd right click on that picture and send it to the back. So you send it behind the hexagons, close up the little gap that you moved with a hexagon, and hey presto, you're ready. So it's just a case of editing the photo, of changing the photo. This obviously, here I'm talking about the B2 first speculation. This can be used with young learners. You know, you've got your basic vocabulary, your apple and your orange and your lemon, and you're revealing bit by bit, and the students are guessing what's behind them, guessing what they are. You know, so it can be a very basic level as well. But do download the presentation from there. Okay. Okay. Good. I want to talk about writing next. Okay. So let's look this time at a B1 question. This is the email. It's longer than it used to be, and it's 4 points instead of 3. I think it used to be 3. Okay. What are some of the key concerns for students here, from my experience? First one is cover all the points. Many students would only cover, you know, some of them, and that's penalized in the feedback, in the grade. Okay. Second problem, what's the problem with this sentence? Can anybody spot a problem with this sentence? Yeah, so Anna said punctuation. So I like cooking my family and my pets. It's a little bit worrying if cooking your family and your pets is one of your hobbies. Okay, so it's missing a comma, hopefully. I like cooking my family and my pets, not cooking my family and my pets. Okay, so that's the point we're making to our students here. Use commas. Okay, the importance of commas. All right. So at this level, punctuation can be it's obviously something the students haven't mastered. One of the ways of working with it after sort of presenting the rules is using the example. Let's eat grandma. Oh, somebody's taught me a new one there. It's like let's eat grandma as opposed to let's eat grandma. So who's that? Manana. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. So here I've removed all of the punctuation, capital letters, full stops, commas, and the students can be working in groups, potentially in breakout rooms, to put them back into this digital doc. Okay, that's one way of practicing punctuation, and then we show the right answer. Another problem I had with my students with writing in general, and not only at B1 level but at C1 level, was paragraphs. I'd get students preparing for the C1 who were very fluent speaking wise, and they write an essay which was a big blob or just individual sentences because they hadn't been taught how to do so. And so you can remove the paragraphs and get them to try and put them back in as well. I want to talk about giving students feedback digitally. So these tools, again, and this is a Google Doc, they're useful. The sort of suggesting option is very useful because you can delete something they've written and suggest something without actually deleting, and you can add comments on the right. So Google Docs is a useful way of correcting through digitally rather than written by hand. My corrections here are not finished really, in the sense that all I've done is corrected the mistakes. I've not given qualitative feedback on how they can improve or what I liked about their work. I need to add that in. Another way of giving feedback to written work is digitally, is to give oral feedback to written work. So I've prepared a little video to kind of demonstrate me doing this. Okay, so I'm just gonna play it. Okay.
Hello there, Isaac. How are you doing? Thank you for your email. I enjoyed reading it. Okay, I'm going to give you some feedback now on the email. Okay, so you had to mention these 5 points. You had to do these 5 things in your email, and you did all of them. Okay, so very well done there. You covered all of the points. In green, I put some things I really liked. So I'm glad you like your new school. That was good use of I'm glad. This description of your pizza, this pizza sounds very nice, sounds delicious. You've used all of the food vocabulary very effectively. Okay, both the nouns and the verbs as well, cutting and mixing. Well done. Also, this last paragraph where you invite Marty to the party is good. You've used the key language, the key phrases, would you like to come? And it's very accurate, so well done. One or two things to learn. In English, you say thank you for coming, thank you for the present. Remember the maths exam was in the past. The maths exam was difficult. In English, when you use decided, you have the full infinitive. So I decided to go out. I decided to do my homework before watching TV, etc. I decided to do something. And then for this one, so a plate can be, in Spanish, a plato, what you eat your food off. But when you make a dish for a party, it's a dish, not a plate. So I made a pizza or some spaghetti bolognese. It's a dish, and it's we're all making a dish. It's a plan. Okay, well done, Isaac. Thanks for your email. Learn from those corrections, and I look forward to reading your next one. Okay.
Okay, let's pause that. Let's go back to our presentation. So this was with Screencast-O-Matic. It's a free online tool. At least if you record for under 15 minutes, it's free, which is plenty. And you don't mind a watermark. So you basically record your screen and record an audio over the top of it. I think there's one or two things to point out here. You'll notice I highlighted in different colors what I wanted to praise and what I wanted to correct. You know, you don't want to cover the whole thing with correction colors, like massive red highlighting everywhere, like massive red pen on the paper. It's nice to point out the things you were happy with, what you've highlighted in green, and to talk about what you were impressed by first. It's good for motivation, good to see that they're making progress, for them to see themselves they're making progress. You can make this system more complicated with, like, some people, you might use different colors for grammar and vocabulary errors and things, but obviously you don't have to. You can also show which part you're talking about with a cursor. So if you saw me, I had my cursor over the bit I was talking about, so somebody watching it could see which part of the essay I was talking about. And the fact that you're making a video as well allows a personalized message for your student. You know, in lockdown, this kind of thing was handy. So with time, correcting in this way isn't that different from correcting in writing. It's just, I mean, if you make lots of videos, it is. So if you made a video, an individual video for every student, that would take you time. You just make one and go through all of the different pieces of writing, and then the student has to watch their correction. But if the student takes the liberty of watching correct feedback to other people, then, you know, is that actually a problem? Because they're probably going to be learning from it, yeah? So it's a way of giving oral feedback digitally, yeah? Screencast-O-Matic, and it's a free screen recorder. It's not the only one. The paid version has more features, but you can get the basic, what you need with the free one here, I think. Okay, somebody's giving more options here, Screencastify. Okay, just finishing off with homework. So I want to talk about homework. So I want to talk about learning management systems, which have been around for a while, of course, but they're gaining even more traction in these times of enforced online learning, let's say. So these sorts of things allow you to create a class, have students join that class digitally, have discussion boards, set work for them, which you can configure to be automatically graded depending on the platform, give you a grade book so you can see your students' progress and so that they can see their progress. Okay, so they're very handy, these kind of LMS or platforms. I just want to show you, go back to the portal, which is where we were before. So you can see the sorts of things you can do with a platform like this. I'm going to use the Pearson English portal, as an example. So I'm going to share my screen, 2 texts. There we go. Okay, so I need to go to my, here we go. Now, this is what I was showing you before. I was showing you the presentation tool. I'm going to go back to the dashboard, and I'm going to go to my classes. I've got these ones are mock classes. I'm going to go to my demo course, and I'm going to assign some work to my students. So I'm going to create an assignment. Let's call it Wednesday's homework. And I need to select some activities that I'm working on. Practice homework activities, let's say I'm in Unit 1. And I'm going to select let's go with a vocabulary activity. I can preview it first of all to see what it is I'm setting my students. Here it's about adjectives of feeling. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one. I also want to set them a use of English question, let's say. Again, just preview. What have we got here? So it's a word formation activity. I'll select that one as well. And select a speaking activity. Now this one here, I think, is they have to actually listen to students during the speaking exam and find their mistakes, or so that they don't make the same thing themselves, don't make the same mistake themselves. So we'll assign that one as well. We can put them in different orders. We can give them the number of goes for each activity. We can select students. Now, often when you set homework, you set it for the whole class, but you might want to set it to certain individuals who need more practice. You might want to differentiate your homework, so you could do that as well. And you could give some instructions if you need to, okay? And I would assign that homework, okay? So there's one of the things is assigning the students doing the work, but then also actually keeping track of the students' progress and the students keeping track of their own progress. So this tool comes with a detailed grade book with scores across the skills, and you can kind of drill down into a unit, see the scores in a unit, and to see the scores in a subsection and an individual activity. So I can see how my students are doing in an individual activity, or have done, I should say. I've just got a little visitor. I'll be 2 minutes. Where were we? I can check on the report to see how my students have done. I can see how long they've spent on the activities. That tells me how much effort they've been making, or perhaps they've been finding them very difficult. So lots of data, and the idea is that I'll stop sharing. The idea is that you use this data then, or information that you get in your teaching, it informs your teaching, okay? Yeah, so that's the portal, the Pearson English portal. It comes, for example, with this course, Gold Experience, which I've referenced today, although it's also available with other courses, okay? Okay, good. So that kind of brings me to the end of my 4 sections, really. I tried to start off talking in general terms about online classes, then talking a little bit about speaking and writing in online classes and referencing exams, and then finishing up with a way of, keeping track of your students digitally, if you like, giving them homework, monitoring their progress. And again, you can give them lots of this sort of mechanical practice for homework as well. So I've referenced the Gold Experience course, which is an exam preparation course for teenagers. And it goes all the way from A1 to C1. So that's where I got my material. Just a reminder that you'll be getting a recording if you want to check anything out again, or you want to have a look at your certificate. And finally, I think we've got 5 minutes until 7 o'clock. So if anyone's got any questions they want to fire off, be my guest. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Michael. That was again an awesome session. So yeah, thanks very much for your time. We have had a few questions come in, a bit more sort of logistical or technical ones, but let's see if you can answer them.
Let's see.
Okay, great. So actually, the first one could be quite straightforward. Can you show us the first email and perhaps then explain a little bit more about that slide.
Let's have a look. I don't know if it was this slide. This was just the question. So it's an essay question from the preliminary exam, and you can see on the question that there are some notes made on it, and these notes tell the student the 4 things that they need to do in their response. And I was underlining the importance of actually making sure that they responded to those 4 points. So that was the question, and then I sort of, going on, I kind of looked at an example answer, but that was to make a different point. I don't know if that's cleared anything up for the teacher.
I think that was okay. It. Yeah, no, and that does seem to be clear to me at least. So okay. That's the same. I've had a quick question come in for the recording. Yes, the recordings will be uploaded to YouTube in the coming days, and a link to that will be sent to you. So next question, Michael, and again, you might not, it's regarding Padlet. Can we record feedback on Padlet?
There's a good question. So let's say you can record. You can click the pink button and make a recording. You can go to settings and allow and configure it to allow feedback, and that opens a box up underneath the recording. I think in that box you can only write text. Although I haven't checked it. If it is as I think it is, if you can only write text underneath, then what you would have, if you were going to follow the example I did about students recording feedback for one another, you just have to put a title above the recording with the number, and then the title above the feedback recording with a number, so they'd know which one to listen to, if it were impossible. That would be a way around it. But I encourage you to go and check. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then there was just a quick and final one, asking about the website mentioned for an activity during this. Might you recall what website that was?
Oh, I don't.
Or whoever it was who asked that, perhaps you could be more specific about which activity it was that you wanted to find out.
Oh, somebody says tiny URL. So, okay, tiny URL. So let's see, I use the tiny URL with my Dropbox. So the tiny URL is just a link to a Dropbox I've created, which has the PowerPoint slide in for you if you need it. I use tiny URLs to simplify an address. You can customize them as well. So I could write, you've got a web address and I could change it. So it's just tinyurl/Pearson teachers, and it's a custom URL. This is really useful actually if you were going to, in a classroom, tell your students to go to a web address, because over the internet and digitally, it doesn't really matter if the URL is 3 lines long, because you just click on it. But if I said for homework, go to this web address, and I wrote it on the board, there's a great chance some students would write it down wrong. So creating a simple tiny URL, in my experience, has been useful for that purpose.
Great, thank you for that. I think that's all we've got time for, Michael. You've yet again delivered a superb session, as is reflected in the comments.
Okay. Well, thanks very much to all the teachers for coming and for their keen participation in the chat box, which helps the presenters, which the presenter feeds off. So thanks very much for your participation and for giving us an hour of your time. And it was Gold Experience I was using as a book. Yeah. So a pleasure to see everybody tonight.
Thank you. And if you guys want to see more of Michael, you can check him out at the live classes. I've just shared the URL in the chat box. Now, certificates are being sent out. There might be an issue with some of your certificates. We are working as quickly as possible to resolve this. Once we have found a solution, we will resend you your certificates. So sit tight and look out for those emails. A recording of this session will be loaded to our YouTube channel. And there are many more webinars being broadcast over the next week as part of the Ready for webinar series. So please look out for those, and we do hope to see you there. Thanks for your time, and see you soon.
Good evening, everybody.